Oh my god, new hypertrophy study just dropped. Dr. Mike discovered the holy grail to gains. Or we're just rehashing information that we already know. So in a recent video from Renaissance Periodization, Dr. Mike and Milo Wolf had a discussion on the new meta-analysis proving that volume is the driver for hypertrophy. And essentially for about 36 minutes, they go over some new research compiled that draws the conclusion that, hey, adding more volume to your workout results in significantly more gains. And they go into the nuances of that, which I will get into too. But the point I want to get at is, did anybody not realize this? I know they're targeting the HIIT crowd where, bro, you only need 4 sets per body part. But overall, I think most people know that to have a well-rounded workout and to get stronger, you got to do more in one of the 3 categories that exist. And that is volume, frequency, and intensity. And it's really hard to do more in intensity or frequency when you've already going a couple times a week and going hard. So that just really leaves volume, leaving us with not a revolutionary study, but just a rehashing of information that we've known for years. So people tend to overreact when a study like this is released. Just look at the lengthened biased exercise study. Then everybody started doing the most lengthened biased exercises, cutting out the top of the range of motion, and forgetting about exercises that have been building solid muscle for over a century. Let's not do that here and jump up our volume without first having a couple prerequisites. As I go through the study and the video that they've made, the study hasn't been released, so really just the video that they've made, I'll discuss their points and their rebuttals of why this is the holy grail, and then I'll explain how it's practically applicable and where they're overreaching a bit just for the clicks, views, and sensation of having a new shiny toy to talk about. So let's get into it. The first thing is that this study was conducted on trained lifters with a minimum of 6 months experience. And anybody that's been lifting for longer than 6 months knows that that essentially doesn't qualify as a trained lifter.
What are we counting as trained?
I think in this case, it was over 6 months of training experience. So it's at least some training experience.
Very, very different than what most people say is trained, but nonetheless, not new beginners.
Correct.
They have nothing in common really with me besides being a human. And although there were other people included in the study that had more experience than that was just the minimum. Let's just say that those people are a bit harder to find. As Dr. Mike talks about later in the video, those serious college lifters are not going to want you fucking with their program just to do this hypertrophy study. There is gains to be made. Trust me, I just graduated college. If somebody came up to me and said, yeah, you're going to train on my program, I'd be like, that's not going to happen. I got my own flow to go. They also implemented a pretty interesting way of adding up the volume. They used partial sets.
So when I'm talking about volume here, I'm talking about fractional sets.
Yeah.
Meaning that, for example, for 30 fractional bicep sets a week, which seems to be really effective for hypertrophy based on research, we might be talking about doing 20 sets of direct bicep work per week and 20 sets of direct back work per week. Because those 20 sets of direct back work would count as 10 sets for your biceps, half a set for your biceps each.
I do think this can be useful if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, but overall, I feel like direct bicep work is much more essential to growing your biceps past that beginner stage, aka lifters who have only been lifting for 6 months, versus me. That's not going to do anything. If I dropped my bicep work and only counted my back work, my biceps would definitely shrink. It would not be enough maintenance volume. So there again, we see the differences between an advanced lifter and a beginner, or at least in this study, a trained lifter. I am a bit skeptical of using these partial sets when counting up your weekly volume. Something that Milo Wolf mentioned was another study where apparently lat pull downs got you the same amount of activation as a bicep curl, which anybody that's done a serious set of bicep curls and a serious set of lat pull downs knows damn well just from the amount of blood flow going through your biceps on either exercise, that can't be true. I know the numbers and the EMG data may say otherwise, but practical experience says something else. Another factor of the study is they said that they had trainees going to failure on everything. And having just recently gotten out of a college gym, I know that most people don't know what the hell failure is. If you're watching niche YouTube content on lifting, your level of training and intensity is significantly higher than the average person in the gym community. I wouldn't even call them part of the gym community because they just do it recreationally, while we're a bit more psychotic and do this more seriously. So when it comes to that intensity level, you have to take into account that their volumes can be higher because their intensity is lower, even if they don't think it is on paper. But some of the conclusions they drew was, first, that if you want to maximally develop one muscle group, doing a lot of volume can be beneficial. Second would be that at 10 sets per week, you get 40% of your maximal gains, and doubling it to 20 adds another half to that. So it'd be 60% of your maximal gains. And starting at 5 sets and going to 35 sets, at least they tested. 35? 35. I don't know if the camera flips this. That adds a doubling every doubling of the sets. Wait, no. It adds a double. Every doubling of the sets, it adds 50% more gains, up to 35, 40 sets there. So starting with that first point, well, duh. Specialization isn't nothing new. Look at the Smolov squat program. Squatting a lot adds a lot to your legs and your maximum squat. But the question is that really beneficial for most people?
So essentially, we're conducting specialization phase studies.
Yes.
Which is great, because it means that we have a very, very strong rationale for saying that on a single muscle group level, higher volumes will produce more growth. But
Yes.
It doesn't tell us whether or not that is feasible to apply on a whole scale level in the context of a full body program.
Having a diversified program developing your body holistically is what we're trying to do. Except for advanced bodybuilders, both on steroids and not on steroids, super specialization into one muscle group of doing 35, 40 sets a week, including those partials, is not really viable or useful. For the average trainee that's even pretty serious about it in years 2 through 5, this is not going to really do much for them. Overall, I don't really have a problem with these conclusions. It's pretty obvious there, especially when you're counting those partial sets as full sets. It's nothing new. And the specialization of, if you want to significantly grow a muscle, hyper focus in on that, because what these studies did apparently is take your quads and then blast them with a shit ton of volume. Okay, who would have thought that would work?
The inbuilt assumption is that in the context of my current program, there's no way I can add 15 sets of quads and still survive week upon week upon week. But what if you took your back training and your hamstring training down to 6 sets a week? According to your research and you and Pax presented, you wouldn't lose any size for sure. If you did that, all of a sudden an extra 15 sets of quads is possible.
But the question is, do you want these gigantor quads and tiny biceps? Because as Dr. Mike says, you can't do this for everything.
Is it possible for me to do 30 sets on everything? No, hell no. I mean, most people wouldn't be able to survive that just because they can't.
Fuck no, you can't. Because, hey, I also want to grow my shoulders. I also want to grow my chest. I need to do deadlifts for my hamstrings and my back. Doing all of this work for just a singular muscle group and sacrificing elsewhere is not viable for lifters like you and me. You and me, you and me. So probably one of the only statements that I vehemently disagreed with in the video was that volume requirements don't change over time and that people just make less and less gains. First off, people make less and less gains and their volume requirements don't change over time because most people get stuck either as a beginner or a lifetime intermediate. Very rarely do they break through that plateau, which requires study of your program and evolving your training, which, I mean, let's be honest, most people don't need to do if they get to that point. Congratulations, you're at a healthy body mass level and you're probably pretty damn busy with the rest of your life. But that doesn't change the fact that you can't say, because those people stop making gains, I can't make any more gains past that point. Even if I do things better and more efficiently than them, then perhaps I could even increase the rate of gains instead of decreasing and inevitably slowing down. And oh no, why don't you just hop on steroids to get bigger? I know that's not Dr. Mike's message, but come on, that's the conclusion most people draw. What's the point of doing this if eventually it just stops? Now back to that first part of the statement, which I disagree with the most. Volume requirements most definitely do fluctuate as you lift for a longer period of time. But it's not just a linear line up. It's more like a tangent sine cosine graph. I don't know. I haven't graphed in like 8 years. I lifted yesterday. Anyways, as I was saying, your volume requirements fluctuate as different factors change. not only your intensity as you become more adept at training, but also your familiarity and mind-muscle connection with the exercises. If you can blast your lats in 6 sets now because you actually feel it instead of 9 previously, well then you can get the amount of work that you need with a higher intensity at 6 sets, and then over time, you work it up to 9 sets. That's your volume dropping and then going back up. I did this exact same thing when I switched to my program of an upper lower arms, upper lower split from push pull legs. Okay, push pull legs, I'm doing 9 sets chest or 9 sets back and then 6 sets arms on whichever day it was. Well, switching to an upper day, I couldn't smash a full pull day and a full push day together. It just simply wasn't possible. So I had to half my volume. And I didn't leave it there. No, I worked it up over a year and a half to the point where I'm at now, where I'm doing an entire pull day and an entire push day in a one upper day, along with an arm day in that week. Holy crap, that's so much volume. The study's right. Yes, but also I had to start at a significantly lower volume than what I was doing to then, with the requisite intensity, work up to those higher volumes. I simply could not have done that at first. It took me a year and a half to get to this point. Currently, I do 162 full sets a week. I think I did that math right. Although this puts me on the higher end of the spectrum for volume, as they said, I'm also not the average trainee. Most definitely somebody who has only been training for 6 months to 2 years, training with a high intensity, would get fucking steamrolled by my program. That's why you start at a lower level, of which I did at 7 years of training a year and a half ago. It also doesn't take into account that most people are not obsessed about it like I am when it comes to recovery and nutrition, which then is a huge factor in recovering from higher volume paired with that high intensity needed for naturals to develop serious muscle. For most people, hey, you know what? Being closer to that 10 sets a week and getting 40% of your maximum gains at a hard intensity level and getting in and out of the gym and not burning out your enjoyment of it is going to be much more beneficial than trying to dog through 33 sets of back in a week because you don't want to fit through doorways. It's not feasible for a large amount of the population. One of the videos that I've been meaning to make and release is an analysis of my program, breaking down how to run it and the 3 levels that you can progress in and graduate your volume and your exercise variety over time to the point where I'm at over multiple years. This is a method that you can use jumping from one program like a push-pull legs to this program, finding the right place to start and using volume as a lever and a tool and not a holy grail of just smack it on and hope for the best. Another rebuttal I have towards this video and this study is that as somebody who trained in a college gym for the past 2 years, let me tell you, the thing that is lacking is not the volume, it is intensity, consistency, and form. Those 3 things are going to be much larger factors in people making gains at this point than volume. Trying out new exercises because they're bored is no problem with the general population. And Mike should be all for this team full range of motion, but actually now team lengthened partial. When I am observing my fellow trainees in the gym, those are the things that are lacking. First, there's only a couple people that show up a lot of the time. Frequency doesn't even fucking matter if you miss the days. That's one of the 3 main factors. Second, they are lollygagging through their sets. There are some people that are training really hard, but the majority of people are like, ooh, that's kind of uncomfortable. I'm gonna put the bar down. Ugh. And then third, relating to that, those people that are training really hard sometimes are not using the best form. Half reps on the bicep curls, not touching their chest on the bench press, really fast eccentric. Now, I'm not a form Nazi who will tell you you need a 4-second eccentric followed by a 2-second concentric, but come on, guys. Don't make it look like you're getting suplexed by the barbell. And last of all those factors for the average trainee is volume. They've got no problem stacking on more exercises when they do show up because they're not really going hard enough for that to be impossible. For somebody who's banging out 6 sets of hard pressing movements, then they're not really going to want to do much more than that. Maybe some cable flies, but you're not going to be finding a lot of people doing 30 sets of chest a week, especially for muscle groups like the quads or the chest that recover a bit slower than something like the biceps or the shoulders. Finding a place to put that volume throughout the week is going to be hard. If I have leg day on Tuesday and leg day on Saturday, I'm pretty sore except for maybe Friday. Oh wait, but then I have to hit legs Saturday again. So if I'm training with any sort of intensity, adding more volume on a frequency basis will not work, but it does work with the smaller muscle groups. Doing a little bit of volume on each of your days for shoulders or biceps and triceps is a great move. As long as you are recovering, as Dr. Mike talks about in his tricep example, hey, adding a little bit more each week won't really affect your overall CNS fatigue that much and will increase your gains. But this is not applicable to all muscle groups. And I think the example of using quads is not really the best one because they're one of the slowest recovering muscle groups, and adding more in-day volume just leads to junk sets. The way I philosophize my program is that I want to grow everything. There are certain things that I'm putting a little bit of a special emphasis on, but my end goal is to give every body part the maximum of what it needs to grow while balanced around everything else. So for example, this year I'm really focusing on bringing up my back. So I added a lot of one arm movements and some extra back volume within my week. And I've tried to do it in ways that did not disrupt the rest of my program. But what I did not do is I did not take out another exercise to put more back volume in. I didn't sacrifice any biceps. I didn't sacrifice any chest. I didn't sacrifice any legs. I just found slots where I could add a little bit more back without ruining the programming for the rest of my physique. Because as a natural lifter, everything needs to grow. I don't have the time to let a body part sit and lag behind. I think specialization can be extremely useful, but not in the context that they talk about. It does not mean adding 15 sets of quads to your weekly volume. It means finding ways to sneak in more arm volume, putting them earlier in your workout, adding an extra day so you can have higher frequency. Things like this, not abandoning all of your programming simply to grow one body part. Come on, like, it's just not viable for anybody. Except for steroid bodybuilders. I do have to give them credit because this is better than the coverage of other scientific studies I've seen before. A lot of the times, as I said earlier, they go overboard. But again and again, Dr. Mike clarifies that, hey, this isn't for all muscle groups. Hey, this is only good in certain contexts. And I think that providing a little bit more nuance on how this applies to natural trainees can be helpful overall. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know. And if you want me to react to any other videos, this is the first reaction video on the channel, let me know. Anyways, like and subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.